recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Bilirakis. 5 minutes for your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it very much. And again, thanks for holding this very important hearing. And I really think the panel as well. This is so important to our consumers. Consumers must be able to trust that information they provide to. They want to make sure that it's safe, that they provide the information to retailers. And the digital world where sales are increasing online, such as, this trust is vital to our economy. However, I do not believe such trust will be preserved by the current patchwork of laws. We need a stable law that ensures merchants are appropriately protecting consumers without sacrificing prosperity. The first question is for Mr. Dodge. You mentioned in your testimony the benefits of the chip and PIN system that we are transitioning to nationwide. However, my understanding is that a potential weakness exists for online transactions because the payment card is not actually present. Doesn't that mean that this technology and every other technology can be made obsolete by criminals that quickly adapt to new technologies? It seems to me that we need to ensure that we pass into law, what we pass into law meets the threat and is not prescriptive, of one type of technology. You agree, and what do you recommend?
So just a couple of points first. Specifically, chip and PIN is not scheduled to be rolled out later this year. This has been a major point of tension between the merchant community and the financial services community because the expectation is that chip only is coming out. Chip and PIN has been in place around the world for many, many years and has been proven to dramatically reduce fraud. Retailers have argued for a very long time that we should be moving to this technology as quickly as possible because of its proven fraud protection and because, in the context of today's hearing, that it has an important effect in devaluing the data that businesses hold. So the information that flows through a retailer's system at the point of sale would be rendered useless to criminals if they were able to capture that, if you use the chip and PIN system. We think it's absolutely critical. To your point about evolving technologies, that's absolutely true. It is the best technology, chip and PIN is the best technology that's available today, and we are years behind the rest of the world in catching up to it. And as a result, we are behind. When chip and PIN was introduced in Europe, we saw fraud flow in two directions, online in Europe, to your point, and to the United States, because it became the lowest common denominator. As for long-term solutions, we believe that chip and PIN serves a near-term need, and we need to evolve to next generation because, as you suggest, the world is moving online. E-commerce is booming online.
Thank you very much. Next question is for the entire panel. Some of the recent data breaches were caused by third parties, such as contractors. What recommendations would you make, if any, to address when these situations occur? We'll start over here, if that's okay with Ms. Hyman.
Well, first of all, with regard to third parties, again, many of our member companies are solution providers, those third parties that you may be talking about. Human error continues to be one of the greatest causes of data breach, and I think doing best practices for the industry and for all companies involved on how to mitigate some of those human errors is very important. Education, ongoing efforts. We have a IT trust mark, security trust mark, which is a benchmark for an organization to undertake appropriate practices for data security. So all of these pieces come into play, but having a standard for data breach notification also puts everybody on notice about what the consumer needs to know in a timely and actionable way.
Good. Mr. Dodge?
The question's about third-party notification?
The third party, with regard to third parties.
Yeah,
correct.
so we think that it's an important incentive that the breached entity be obligated to make the notice, but flexibility should exist for parties to contractually determine, in the instance of a breach, who should issue the notice.
Thank you. Please, ma'am.
As a vendor, we see lots of increasing requirements from our clients to not only adhere to security standards, but to have indemnification if a breach occurs in our environment of the data that we're holding and processing for them.
Thank you. Mr. Harzel?
My recommendation would be maybe that there's even a possible compromise here, which is if breached entities have no relationship to the consumer whose data they hold, then perhaps there could be some kind of requirement where you would have to disclose the relationship to say, we got this information from an entity that collected your personal information, which is why you don't recognize us, but we were breached. And so that could be one way to handle it.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I actually have one more question.
It's unanimous consent that the gentleman be able to ask his question. Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you.
It's an immense power that I wield here, Gus.
Okay, for the panel again, keeping in mind the touchstone of this process is notifying an individual in the event that they need to mitigate the economic risks associated with a breach. Which entity is in the best position to notify individuals after a breach? Is there a reason to deviate from the structure that the states have used? And we'll start with Ms. Hyman, please.
Are you asking in terms of who's responsible for the notification or which enforcement agency?
Who should be responsible for the notification?
We want to make sure that we're not over notification or confusing the consumer. So that entity with which they've provided their information to, that they've done the transaction, would be the first source. Then contractually, and I come back to the previous question about third parties, there are contractual relationships beyond that.
Again, with regard to the states, how would you?
We've said that the state attorneys general should have enforcement opportunities. If it's also the FTC that's undertaking enforcement, one should extinguish the other. They should not happen simultaneously.
Very good. I'm sorry. I'm having a little trouble hearing. I apologize. Mr. Dodge, please.
Sure. We strongly believe that the obligation to notify should be with the breached entity, and then again, flexibility to among parties to contractually determine who sends the notification if it makes more sense for somebody else to send it. And we agree that state attorneys general have an important role to play in this.
Very good. Thank you, please.
In the interest of time, I will agree.
Okay, very good.
And I would agree that the current trajectory of the state law is what I would recommend.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for allowing me to ask that last question.
Chair thanks the gentleman. The gentleman does yield back.